Welcome back, 412-575-2600 on the Borders and Borders hotline. That's where you can call us. And we'll take your tweets at Josh Taylor HD. Josh Taylor, Paul Zeise joining me live from the 93.7 The Fan newsroom. Paul, we talked Steelers in this first segment. Got to talk Pirates, the news that came down late this evening, or I should say late this afternoon, early this evening. They designated 2 players for assignment, players that we were used to seeing quite a bit over the last couple seasons. Right-hander Trevor Williams gets designated for assignment, and he had been one of their heavy innings guys, led the team in innings the past 3 seasons, had led the team in wins, and also led them in losses, but was pretty much one of their more steady guys the last few years. And also Jose Osuna, a guy who was a very constant target of discussion on this show, especially last season. More fans wanted him in the lineup. But, Paul, your thoughts on these 2 moves, and how big is this as far as the long-term view for you for the Pirates?
Well, I mean, I think with Trevor Williams, you know, he wasn't very good last year, and this year he was really, really not very good. They weren't going to offer him another contract. They weren't going to, pay him. And so they decided the best course of action would be to let him go and, become a free agent. I think the big thing was they did try and sort of move him, see if anyone had any interest, but it's hard to, move a guy when every other team knows you're trying to get rid of him. Right. Because they're like, why would we trade you for him when in a few weeks we know he's going to be available? Osuna, Josh, has there ever been a guy like Osuna in this town? I can't think of another guy who always was the answer for angry fans as to who needs to play. And for whatever reason, the organization just never had the same view of him. And, you convinced yourself, and I know I at times convinced myself that he was a great hitter and a great fielder. But the numbers and the results probably said something completely different. Can you remember a guy where everybody wanted this guy to play, and he just really wasn't that good?
That consistently over a long period of time where people consistently kept asking for a guy? No, in the past, we've usually seen the fans' ire be directed toward not wanting to see a guy play, but this much for wanting to see a guy play. I think you're onto something. I think it is kind of rare that we've seen a guy like that has that much of a fan outcry for wanting to see him more. Pitchers maybe wanting to see Mitch Keller called up, but position players, I think you're right. There's something to that as far as the love for Jose Osuna. I like to always say there's a difference between a choice and a lack of options. Jose Osuna might have been the guy that looked a lot better because maybe a lack of option as opposed to having a choice, so to speak. But at the same time, when you look at what they're trying to do with this roster, it's clear that they're going to try to get younger. It's clear they're going to try to bring some higher-ranked prospects here and try to flush some younger talent into the system. But let's go to the phone lines. We start with Alex in Mount Lebanon. Alex, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hi, how are you doing tonight?
Good. How are you, Alex?
Doing good. I think that the Steelers will beat the Jaguars on Sunday because they won't have to tackle Leonard Fournette like they did the last time.
That's fair. The option at the running game besides Fournette is a lot more easier to deal with. I'll also say this much. I'm expecting this defense to not only have a better time against the run, I'm expecting them to possibly have a better time with the pass rush too. That may be something else that gives them a bit of an edge. So if I'm looking for reasons why they win this game, I am starting and finishing with the defense. As far as the offense, just give enough points for the defense to do their job at the end. I think they'll be fine. Paul?
No, I agree, and I would say this. Looking at Leonard Fournette this year, I think the Steelers would love to be facing him because he just does not look like he's very good anymore. He doesn't look like he's got much left. That whole team, in fact, to me, is a team that's going to be limping and I'm talking about Tampa, limping to the finish line.
I think that's a fair way to look at it, and that's considering the fact that Tampa was the paper champions as early as, July and August? When we saw these free agency moves and Tom Brady came there and they brought Gronk back and they got Fournette and they got Shady McCoy and everybody's like, oh, Tampa. And I kept reminding people, you still got New Orleans and they can still win the division. Now, things might look different now with Drew Brees hurt for a few weeks, but at the same time, I wasn't ready to believe it then. And I'm kind of feeling the same way you are. They're not circling the drain yet, but it's getting pretty close. Let's go to John in Green Tree. John, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, man. How you doing, man? How you doing?
All right.
A question about the pick game tomorrow, man. I think we can beat Virginia Tech and all that. And a question, and what about the Steelers game, man? I think we can beat Jacksonville. Bye.
Thanks for the call, John. Paul and I think we pretty much laid out how we feel about this game with the Steelers. I think we agree, Paul, that the Steelers should win this game. Not only looking at the records, but just the way things stack up on paper. So I'll shift it over to Pitt. Pitt being at home, finally, with the chance to win a game at home again. Granted, there's a little bit of a fly in the ointment with this uncertainty as far as wearing masks on the field, but they can play with them down. They don't have to pull them up. They had to put a new statement back out there, Paul. This is kind of a weird situation, and I'm hoping it doesn't create a lot of confusion on the field.
Well, I would say a larger issue is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was the running backs coach, Andre Powell, that made some sort of a quote about how they're going to be without a prominent player. So who is that, I guess, is the big question. And that, to me, is far more concerning than whether they wear a mask up or down or a scarf or whatever. I just silly, but whatever. I mean, whatever the rules are, but follow the rules. But don't you agree that the larger issue is, now Pat Narduzzi obviously never tells you anything.
Right.
And we probably won't know who this player is until we start watching the game and say, okay, wait, that guy is missing. But that, to me, is far more concerning, depending on who it is.
And it's concerning because you're facing a Virginia Tech team that, while they may not be what you expected the past couple years, they're still potent enough. They can still do enough to give this team, as currently constructed, including that prominent player that it's been indicated that they're probably going to miss, it gives this roster even more of a problem. So that's something that kind of sticks out. And if you are losing that prominent player who has yet to be named, it does make it more of a challenge for Pitt, especially when you just snapped the losing streak and finally got a win under your belt, and you're trying to keep it rolling and really avoid this season really getting out of hand and trying to salvage somewhat of it. Before we go to a break, we got to talk about our tweet of the night. That is brought to you by Tri-State Office Furniture. That comes from my guy, Alex Kazora. Shout out to Alex. He says, one stat to show the value of Tyson Alualu. Opponent's yards per carry when Alualu is on the field, 1.98. Opponent yards per carry when Alualu isn't on the field, 5.40. Massive, massive difference. And I'll also add a caveat in there. Mike Hilton is a guy who makes a big difference when he's not in there also. But yeah, two pieces on that run defense that are both now back in the lineup. Stick around.